My name's Nicola and I'm a feminist and I'm also a domestic abuse service user. So I'm just going to talk about the background to our campaign as service users to support Rise, domestic abuse charity in Brighton, and then talking about next steps, and if we've got some time I'll show some images from the campaign. So I've been a user of Rise's vital services for a number of years, and I would say they've been a lifeline during some incredibly difficult times. And actually, I feel like I owe them my life. You know, things have been challenging over the last 4 years, and they've supported me with casework, legal advice training, child therapy, social worker input, and it's all been through a trauma-informed and female-focused way. Their understanding and connected support across departments means that I felt safe and secure during that time. So on the 13th of February 2021, when I found out that Rise had lost the contract to deliver many of their essential services from this month, the 1st of April onwards, I was in absolute shock. I couldn't believe it because they've been such a pillar of the community and a lifesaver for women and children and LGBT service users over the past 26 years. They've got unparalleled expertise and Brighton and Hove cannot afford to lose that. So I thought, what can I do? Well, you know, I'm only a service user, so I thought I'll set up a petition and I'll see what happens. Within 24 hours, we had 3,000 signatures, and it just grew from there. And actually, over a 6-week period, we gathered 30,000 signatures, which just goes to show how upset and angry and worried service users are, but also community members and city residents, because this city really needs these services. Is really worrying in terms of safeguarding and the fact that survivors are not being factored into these decisions. So the decision was taken to split up domestic abuse provision into 3 different providers. And actually, the concern there obviously is about what that means if you've got no services with one overarching perspective. That safeguarding is going to create issues in that sense. Our first ask was to discuss with Brighton and Hove Council to fund Rise, so not to decommission them, but to ensure that they had dedicated core funds to maintain helplines and casework and client services, and then 2, to bring our women's refuge home, so to keep those services based on trust and local connections. So our first steps really after that were to set up meetings with Brighton councillors. Now, some were more responsive than others, some were in shock, some obviously were playing a very careful game of not wanting to be left holding the baby. And so it took a little while of digging to work out what actually was happening. Obviously, you know, sort of the contractors had had a month's notice at that point, but we didn't as service users know until a month later. So we started to develop a clear timeline to really look at what had happened, and actually what had happened was a complete mess. So yeah, can you hear me? You can. So we were really disappointed that Brighton Council had failed to give sufficient weight to the social value that Rise bring to all of their contracts, that they hadn't factored in this specialism, this dedication, the fact that they'd set up a number of these services themselves in the first place, and the fact they were being undercut by limited companies. We were really concerned that the council weren't able to offer us any concrete course of action to avoid this fragmentation. And so we asked them to offer a fee to Stonewater and Victim Support, who are the other 2 contracted organisations, to ask them to withdraw. We were told that the contracts had been signed and that wasn't possible. That wasn't true. They hadn't been signed. We asked the council to start a new procurement process and ensure that the social value, as already agreed by Brighton Council, was fully embedded, to find additional funding for Rise to support their ongoing core costs, including this helpline, and to help them find secure and affordable premises. We also asked that new funds would be allocated to provide refuge services under the Domestic Abuse Bill, which would be made available to local not-for-profit providers and not just unilaterally handed over to Stonewater, which, whilst being a housing association, is also a limited company, profit being their bottom line. So a commitment to keep the contracts under review in consultation with service users like myself, and to recommission domestic abuse services from a local provider at the first opportunity. So we did a number of things. We submitted, well, I say we, I didn't submit these Freedom of Information requests. We have an FOI queen in Danny Aarons, or also known as Rebel Yarns, so some of you may have seen her speak at another WP UK event. We set up the Rise Up campaign, hashtag Rise Up, where we encourage people to post pictures of hashtag Rise Up written on their hands and share that with our campaign message. And that was really successful in getting coverage in our local and actually national newspapers. And we set up 2 different petition displays. We couldn't call them demonstrations because of the lockdown, but we set up socially distanced petition displays with 30-metre long printed banner with all of the signatories of the petition to visually show how upset people are about this decommissioning and how important Rise is to us in this city. We created a number of memes, which I really recommend. That's a fun way to get your message across. And I'll show you some of those if I get some time. And we made sure that the hashtag Bring Our Refuge Home was included in every social media post that we posted. And actually that means we still got a timeline if we need to. We, the FOI asked for things like, you know, the joint commissioning arrangement with East Sussex Council for sexual violence services, consultation processes undertaken by the council, who was on the procurement panel, that's still not been revealed, a copy of the tender document, and a copy of the Equalities Impact Assessment. Amongst other documents, to just start to really work out what had gone on, because actually when we spoke to a lot of the councillors, they also didn't seem to know what had happened, and that was the really concerning thing, that paid representatives did not understand what had taken place, and that it was being left to survivors to unpick this and work it out for them. So our campaign has exposed a litany of these errors, you know, sort of 40 equality impact assessments. I mean, just laughable. I'm not an expert, and I mean, I just can't believe that they were ever, you know, agreed. Only 1 mention of women in the tender as a word. No full violence against women and girls strategy document or delivery plan for the city. Councillor oversight forgotten. Panels that were supposed to be set up weren't set up and then were forgotten about. Posts vacant. We had meetings with local MPs and councillors, and we had supportive words to, you know, sort of recognise our campaign and concerns about the fact that the services were being broken up and handed out. But actually, very little action. Rise have had to give up the HQ that they have been in for some time and are now based in essentially a shipping container in the marina of Brighton. Rise's fundraising for their services doubled the money coming to the city for domestic abuse services. So they added value to everything that they did. Now what the council pays for is what they'll get and not a penny more. So as a result of that, in the middle of March, I presented this petition of 30,000 signatures to the council's Policy and Resources Committee, which is now the largest petition ever presented to the council. And we asked them for a full, transparent investigation. We asked them to find Rise new premises, and we asked for priority for locally provided specialist services for women from MHCLG funds, which is national government funds. And then we also asked to be included as part of a stakeholder group for survivors to oversee the new contract. We looked into putting together a judicial review, and we actually had nearly 3 weeks of free legal support from barristers at Matrix Chambers and the Public Law Project, who were amazing, but there just wasn't sufficient time to pull this together. But also Brighton Council Legal Department stalled. They said that I had no right to bring a case as I wasn't living in a refuge. They denied that I was a service user. They dismissed my experiences of domestic abuse. They said that I only experienced coercive control, even though it had been going on for years and years and years. And it means that my son's father isn't able to contact me. They delayed sending relevant documents until the last minute to scupper any claims for legal aid, and they threatened to pursue me for costs. They treated me like my ex-partner. They gaslit me and our campaign service users by delaying, diminishing and maltreating us. And it's exactly the same feeling, incredibly triggering. We then asked Brighton Council to take action. We said we must be involved in monitoring these contracts and we need to see urgent action for Rise to find new premises. Following this, the council, actually from a Tory councillor, passed the following agreement to strongly support the work of Rise, to note that the Policy and Resources Committee establishes a member working group to review this process, to leave no stone unturned, their words, in getting to the bottom of these decisions, and to expedite requests for freedom of information requests. Well, on that case, we're still waiting. So, and also for written responses to questions that we made at committee in the middle of March. Whilst we're in a strong position now because of uncovering all of this trail of errors and the fiasco ongoing, we weren't able to achieve our goal of overturning these decisions, unfortunately, and the decommissioning of Rise's domestic abuse services. But we do now have case studies, resources, plans and a strategy to hold the council to account. One of the good things about having a comments function on our petition is we now have thousands and thousands of comments from people, either interested parties or service users, but also sympathetic people who cannot understand why this has happened, including from police officers. And we have been turning those into case studies because we are watching and we want to see if the new contracts, when they carry on, if they put a step wrong, that we are ready to go back to Matrix Chambers and take further legal action. We have, as an ongoing basis, we have further meetings with council staff and councillors, including a meeting next week with the Chief Executive of Brighton Council to keep up the pressure and really keep them to account, because actually they've been treating us abominably and they've been treating past service users, future service users and staff at Rise abominably. So we continue to prep case studies based on these comments, and we can, if we need to, we can address this legally, as I said. So where does this leave us? We've got fragmented services. I saw a post that Stonewater put on Twitter last night to say the name of the new refuge and talking about how wonderful they are, and I felt cold. I know now that for the next 5 years, I won't get the service I need if I need it. That my child won't get the service he needs if he needs it. And what does that mean for us? There's fragmentation of these services. There's currently no HQ for Rise. These services now seem to be run by men. They are fully inclusive. The head of housing operations at Stonewater has been writing in Inside Housing magazine about moving towards fully inclusive refuge services. Well, we all know what that means, don't we? It means safeguarding goes out the window. And to be honest, it feels like following the second wave, third wave of feminist setting up of these services in the 70s, that 50 years later we're starting again, that actually we almost need to go back to the drawing board and set up homegrown services from scratch. Why do we have to do that when it's already been done? We're reinventing the wheel. As I said, we're still waiting for responses from Brighton Council, and we will keep needling them for that. But also there's been no recognition that trauma is not transphobia. So I have been accused of, I've come over the parapet to with this case, and I've had to deal with people on social media accusing me of that, of making claims about things that aren't true, and not being able to understand that actually if you're experiencing something like this, trauma is a physiological and a physical and a mental and emotional experience that is truly troubling and concerning. And the other thing is that all organisations talk about how important it is to recognise service users' needs and wants. Well, they honestly have shafted us. We have said what we want. We have said why we need it, and we have said how we want it, and they have completely ignored us. So it really feels like there's a lot of talk about women's safety at the moment, for obvious reasons, even though things get worse and worse. The safety is the bare minimum, it's the lowest bar, but we need freedom, respect, independence and equality. And the fear of male violence means that so many women live smaller lives. Rise's vision is freedom from domestic abuse, and they've helped me to find my freedom. I was going to show some images, but